Hello, welcome back to the Hortman Show. My name's Steve Allgaier. I'm with the University of Maryland, Carroll County Extension. And I just wanted to let you welcome back to another interesting week. Again, the rain continues, and it's led to kind of all sorts of adventures in the gardening and landscape world. But before we get into that, Courtney sent in a picture to our Facebook page asking what kind of beetle this is. Let me straighten it out for you. She found it in City Park. This is a stag beetle. It's kind of funny because I've seen lots of them also, and periodically people have been bringing them into my office saying, hey, what kind of beetle is this? It's found throughout Carroll County. For some reason, things must have lined up well for their populations because there's a lot of them out there. I found my dogs eating 2 of them the other day. These are, again, one of these big showy beetles that really aren't a worry. They don't cause much damage to anything. So I tell people just kind of look at them. They do have 2 pinchers on the front of them, which are quite noticeable and sizable, but they really, as long as you keep your fingers out of there, they don't cause much damage. I generally tell people they're so slow moving, if you get caught by one of these, you're really slow. Things that have come across my desk this week, which isn't surprising, and I suspect we're going to see it for the rest of the summer, is it came really as a question. I found a pile of this bark on my desk, and there was a little note saying, help, my tree's falling apart, the bark's falling off. And this is the bark off of what's known as a sycamore or a London plane tree. Both these species are planted in Carroll County, and they're very similar other than the fruit. And this year, the bark is popping off of them quite quickly, and a lot of this is a function of the rain. Not that the rain is washing it off, but when you get more rain, you get more girth on your tree. This is one of the limiting factors for many trees when it comes to growth, is how much moisture is available. And then the other limiting factor, of course, is sunlight. And in this case, trees are getting plenty of moisture, and with that comes extra girth. And this is a loose bark on a sycamore anyway. They naturally shed some of their bark during the growing season. But this year, because they're expanding so quickly, it seems, or a lot of people have noticed more of this bark in their lawns. This is a natural occurrence. I wouldn't worry about it. There's even some theories, although I don't think they've been proven, that evolutionarily this shedding actually allows for the tree to reduce maybe insect populations. It doesn't allow for hiding places, and maybe even lichens and funguses that would normally maybe hide under some bark would be shed with this exfoliation, kind of like what you do with your skin. Catch of the week for me, and this is a great catch of the week because I should bring gloves more often. Seems like a lot of these things I pick up have spines. We'll show both pieces. This is what a lot of people see on the edge of fields or in woods. This particular plant is known as Wineberry. Many people call it raspberries because right now, and probably continuing for a couple of weeks, they're really starting to taper off. I just happened to find a bunch. Is a berry that's still on the plant. And these weeds, and this is an invasive weed, quite literally will take over understories and the edge of woodlands. And that's one of the problems that many people have with their landscape, are these non-native invasive species moving in. And this is a notorious thug, and I think it's successful because they're a big herbivore, which many of us know, the deer, white-tailed deer, seems to leave this plant alone. You rarely see it browsed. When you do see it browsed, meaning where the tops have been chewed off, you know the deer are very hungry, or populations in that area are very high. The plant came in the 1890s, and it was actually brought in to be used as breeding stock for regular raspberries. It's up and down the East Coast, and it extends into portions of the Midwest. I think it really only goes as far south as maybe Tennessee or Kentucky. But it is quite prevalent in our woodlands. Many foresters and native plant enthusiasts really hate to see this stuff because when it's in, that's really all you see. It grows to be about 3 or 4 foot tall, difficult to manage. I feel like I do my part because this time of the year, I love eating the berry. Yes, the berry is edible, and it's a nice tart berry that can be used for pies or jams or whatever. It needs a little bit of sugar, I guess, if you don't like a lot of tartness. But there's a lot of them this year. And this plant, I have a feeling, is just going to keep spreading and spreading. There are controls. You can mechanically mow them and keep mowing them to get rid of them. Some people choose to use herbicides, and you can use a selective herbicide. The thing that differentiates this plant from blackberries and other cultivated raspberries is the thorn pattern. And if you get a close-up here, you can see that the thorns, there's very few stout thorns, which are relatively sharp. You can see me grimace every so often if I grab hold of this. But then there's a lot, hundreds of very fine hair-like thorns. They really aren't even thorns. I can run my finger down this area without the stout thorns, and it feels like stiff hair. But it is very prickly. And if you do choose to pick these things, I would say, hey, wear a long pair of pants. Of course, take precautions against ticks because ticks like this type of habitat. It's at that right level where ticks can kind of grab on then to mammals like us and get their blood meal. And maybe even look out for poison ivy, because typically when you find this stuff, you'll find other vining plants trying to find some space underneath of them. And poison ivy and Japanese honeysuckle a lot of times go hand in hand with this. So do your part, eat the berries, and try and eliminate this stuff from any of your woodlands, if you own woodlands or property, because the berries, once birds eat them, they spread the seed, and it just keeps coming up. And I would not recommend finding some of this in the woods and planting it in the patch, because you're just introducing this weed to your neighborhood. The birds will carry off that seed and people will cuss you forever. Lots of questions also have come in about tomatoes. Our summer has been wet and overcast, and the tomatoes, in one sense, I guess, love it because people are reporting these giant plants, which can also be a management problem. Just having big plants, you have to build trellises that are taller or supports that are taller for it. And many people are complaining that their tomatoes aren't ripening, and of course tomatoes like sunshine and heat, and we need a little bit more of both. I suspect by the time you see this, we'll have plenty of tomatoes coming on. The one thing, though, that I have noticed, and a lot of people in my position have noticed, is that tomatoes are being plagued by all sorts of fungal diseases, septoria and early blight. There's a whole litany of fungal diseases that will bother tomatoes. And one of the factors that contributes to that disease pattern is the way we grow tomatoes. And a lot of people use tomato cages, which are great if we have good air circulation. But years like this, where we have the right conditions, meaning humidity with a little bit of heat, especially at night, will be preconditions for fungal diseases starting. And tomatoes that grow in a cage, if you look at these round circular cages, it tends to grow the tomatoes in a very tight column. And that creates an atmosphere that's even better for these funguses. So ideally, if you can, invest in some inexpensive T-posts. You can buy these trellising systems that already come pre-made. Even something like this, it's only about, probably what? A little less than 5 foot tall, maybe 5 foot tall, and driven into the ground maybe 4.5 foot. You would have to extend something like that for these more robust tomatoes that a lot of people are seeing this year just because of the moisture. T-posts with twine or wire, a lot of people have reported, have been very effective ways of creating a trellis system. And the beauty of a trellis system is that you can spread your plant out and support it so that air circulation is a little bit better, and help to reduce at least that incidence or atmosphere that promotes fungal diseases. What else do we have here? One of the things that came in via email that I got that I thought was interesting is a problem that a gentleman had with his lawn. He just had a, let me pull up the notes that I have here. Here we go. He called, and then I said, I really need pictures before I can give you any information. But we have a picture up on the screen. And it was of his newly planted lawn. He had it planted last July. Now, typically I tell people the middle of the summer in July, I think he even said July 15th, which is almost dead center, is a really difficult time typically to get lawns established because we tend to be dry. Now, we had relatively good moisture last year and his lawn grew in, but the problem he found was that this whole new section died this year in the middle of July while he was mowing. Not all of a sudden while he was mowing, but actually about a week and a half ago, he noticed that almost the entire section was turning brown. And I said, well, send me some pictures, and these are the pictures that you're looking at. And sure enough, there was a marked difference between the established grass he'd had there for years and this very new grass. And the thing that looked suspicious was the grass was very thin in this new section, thin in blade structure. And I asked him, do you know what species they put in? And he said, yeah, a red fescue. And right away I knew there probably was some problem. So we went through the regimen of lawn care, and lo and behold, we discovered that he planted a shade-tolerant seed, which can be grown in sun, but that's where I think you, as the gardening or lawn-loving public, need to understand that not all grass species are created equal. You can't treat them the same way. And one of the problems with that people run into with some of these fine fescues, which red fescue is that it should not be mowed in the middle of the summer. It's a very low traffic grass. It doesn't like a lot of foot traffic or lawnmowers running over it. And it needs to get a little tall and floppy. It's also a low nutrient grass. It shouldn't be fertilized in the spring. If anything, you should do one application of fertilizer in the fall. And of course the other problem was that he was cutting it several times during the summer, which will kill off a lot of these fine fescues. So they were pretty pictures for me because, of course, I could then share them with you. The other important thing that he really needed to do, and I suspect once he does it, is he needs to check his soil pH. Fine fescues, unlike the turf-type tall fescues, like a more acidic soil, and he did report that he limed his soil, which is a sweetening agent and will make the pH higher and less acidic. He did that, and that's kind of counterproductive for a grass like that if he made his pH too high. So I know for people that aren't fascinated by lawns, they're going to yawn, but there's a lot of people out there that love their turf grasses and their lawns. And if you stick with the basics and you understand what the requirements are, just try to meet those basic requirements. There's all sorts of magic potions out there that people claim will resolve this issue or that, but part of this relies on the science. So get a soil test, find out especially what the soil pH is of your lawn, and then also follow the guidelines for that grass species. In his condition, or in his situation, it was a sunny site, and that really should have gotten what's known as the turf-type tall fescue. That's really well suited, at least in our area, for what he wants, but unfortunately he didn't get. The other situation that got emailed into me was kind of interesting, and it's been a while since I've seen it, and I checked with a couple other states, and I noticed in some of their publications that they're also reporting issues with this particular pest, and this would be what I call bug of the week, and it's called a Magnolia Weevil, or it's also known as a yellow poplar weevil, and it's a very small weevil-shaped bug, and we'll have a picture of that in a little bit. But what I want to show you first is the damage, and in this case, and frequently in the past when I have seen it, although I'm seeing more of it this year, it will attack some of the evergreen magnolias or semi-evergreen magnolias, Magnolia virginiana, and it creates these brown lesions, the larvae do. I think they actually mine into the leaf. and you'll get these rice-sized brown lesions. And as you can see by the picture, especially toward the top of this first one, you see these brown spots. They damage the foliage, and really as homeowners, some people are very intolerant of any damage. The reality is it's probably going to be okay. In other words, the plant is getting relatively minor damage. There's still a fair amount of leaf on this particular magnolia, so I have a feeling they can just weather it out without bothering with an insecticide. There are many insecticides that could kill this, including insecticidal soaps, and if you get them on the insect itself. But in general, as you can see, that there's a lot of green leaves on this plant, and there are some of these speckled leaves, and that's just the damage from the larva. The last picture here I wanted to show you was that of the actual weevil, and you have to kind of use, I wish I had a live sample in here, but I didn't get it, but he's holding these weevils in his hand, and you can see that they are these small little black bugs, very dark brown, actually, well, probably black, but this weevil is distinct because the head portion has kind of two bumps on it, which makes it a little bit different. Again, if you can let these ride, generally predators will come in, meaning not spray them, and start to eat down the population. Like all of these insects, and you all have seen it with Japanese beetles and with brown marmorated stink bugs, they tend to have an interesting curve over time with respect to their population. You'll have many, many years where you'll see a few, but not a whole lot, and then all of a sudden we'll have this large upturn or uptick. I think that's what we're seeing with Japanese beetles this year, and probably next year we'll see lots of them. So again, this is an interesting thing, and it's been reported in Tennessee and Pennsylvania that they've seen upticks in this particular weevil's population. Gosh, you know what? I think we covered everything for the week. Again, if you have questions, please email them to the Hortman, or you can give me a call at 410-386-2776. Follow us on YouTube or like us on social media. And until next week, we'll catch up with you again.